What's going on, everybody? In this video, we will be discussing how to efficiently and effectively get better at mouse and keyboard. If you are a new mouse and keyboard player, this one is for you. This is going to be geared more towards Fortnite, but these tips can be used for different games as well. As always, if you enjoy the video, do me a favor and hit that like button and share this video. So first, let's talk about your physical mouse and keyboard. Then we will get to settings and binds for Fortnite. So first, let's talk about your mouse. When it comes to your mouse, you don't want to cheap out, but if a cheap mouse is all you can afford at the moment, then it is not the end of the world. The reason you don't want to cheap out is mostly due to the mouse's sensor. How accurate can it be with your movement? Cheaper mice often can be less smooth and their liftoff distance can be too big. If you don't know what liftoff distance is, it's the distance you need to lift the mouse to disconnect the mouse from picking up any movement so you can adjust your mouse's position on your desk or mouse pad. When choosing your mouse, be sure to pick a mouse that has buttons on the side as well. For Fortnite, if you look at any popular FPS gaming mouse, you usually can't go wrong. There are mice that have like 12 buttons on the side. Don't get that. It can be used for FPS games, but they typically aren't because it is hard to hit the exact button you want to press when there are that many. 2 to 3 buttons on the side of a mouse is perfectly fine. If you're getting a wireless mouse, you don't have to worry about this, but if you are getting a wired mouse, it is best to have a mouse with a braided cable, not rubber. Rubber cables are often stiff compared to braided cables and can get in the way of you moving your mouse smoothly. If you can afford it, I recommend getting a cord bungee. Also, don't feel like you have to ball out on a wireless mouse. They are often expensive and many of the top companies have wired versions that are the same but half the price. Finally, when it comes to getting an ergonomic mouse or not, this is totally preference. Some people need ergonomic mice due to problems in their wrists or their hands. If you aren't one of those people, then choose what you think will be most comfortable for you. I will make sure to link some examples in the description down below. Now, let's talk about your keyboard. With keyboards being generally more expensive than mice, you can get a relatively cheaper keyboard than the $200, $300 keyboards that you will see all the streamers have. Just make sure it is mechanical. The reason you want to make sure it's a mechanical keyboard is because they pop up faster than membrane keys, allowing you to register clicks faster. Unless you are going to be using your keyboard for work or schooling purposes where you need a number pad, you should consider a TKL or a 60% keyboard. Both of these are smaller keyboards, essentially taking away some keys with TKL or 10 keys less, being a little bit smaller than a full size, and 60% being a little bit smaller than a TKL keyboard. The advantage to a smaller keyboard is all about giving your mouse enough space to move around. Don't worry, the keys on your keyboard won't actually be smaller, the keyboard will just have less keys. Speaking of space, as a general rule, the bigger the mouse pad, the better. Again, with these, I won't be leaving you hanging. I'll give you some examples of what to get with links in the description below. Okay, so now that we got the physical stuff out of the way, now we're gonna get to the settings and binds. Let's start with settings pertaining to your mouse. Your DPI is just as important as your in-game sensitivity. The most common two are 400 and 800 DPI. I personally use 800 DPI, and my sensitivity in-game is 6.9 for both my X and my Y axis. The higher your DPI, the lower your in-game sensitivity will need to be. The lower your DPI, the higher your in-game sensitivity will need to be. For example, Ninja uses a DPI of 800 and his in-game X axis is 7.5 and Y is 6.5. Nick 830 uses a DPI of 1600 with an X of 10 and a Y axis of 5. Tifu with a DPI of 400 with an X axis and a Y axis of 11.9. As you can see, all of this is personal preference, but I do strongly encourage a beginner to start with a DPI of 800 or 400 and keep the X and Y axis the same. From there on, hop into creative and mess around with it a little bit. As a general rule, your scoped and targeting sensitivity should be lower than your X and Y. Again, hop into creative and mess with this. Some people like it really low and some people like it just as fast as their X and Y. On your mouse, you should not change your left and right click from anything other than firing and aiming down sights. I would highly encourage you to take the ability to swap to the next or previous weapon off of your scroll wheel. The scroll wheel should be used for what is one of the biggest advantages of mouse and keyboard, scroll wheel reset. Or it should be used as your use button, which you see Tfue do, which opens chests, doors, and picks up items, things such as that. For your side buttons, I recommend making these important functions. I have mine set as wall and ramp. I've seen some people use it for other builds, weapons, and as an edit button. For beginners, I do recommend binding your builds to them. If you have more than 2 buttons, I don't recommend making all of them build binds. A max of 2 is perfect for someone just learning how to use mouse and keyboard. Then maybe setting another one as a weapon is fine. The reason being is that you don't want to put too many builds on one finger. Typically 1 bind per finger is ideal, but since your thumb doesn't have much else to do, 2 building binds will work. Now for settings pertaining to your keyboard. Your keybinds are going to be very specific to you and how comfortable you are using them. I will give you examples and recommendations of where to put certain functions, but if that is not comfortable for you, then by all means, change it to a different key. But the only keys you should never change is WASD. These are your movement keys, and there is a reason everyone uses them and why they are standard in every game. They are the most efficient keys for movement. You don't want to have to reach to left control or up to T every time you want to make a movement. The rest of your keys should be centered around these 4 keys. Do not have one of your build binds as L, it will hinder you, and plus it just makes no sense. Alright, let's talk about your build binds. As I mentioned before, I put 2 of my builds on my mouse, and I do recommend that. I also have one as Q and one as C. I am able to hit Q with my ring finger and C with my thumb. I've also seen people use X, V, E, caps lock, tab, left shift, and F. The biggest thing to think about is if you are using one finger for 2 or more builds. I don't recommend that at all. A general rule to follow is 1 finger to each build unless it's your thumb. That's why I use Q and C. It separates the builds onto 2 separate fingers. I also don't recommend using your middle finger for anything other than W and S, moving forward and moving backwards. In Fortnite, it does take time to reach your full speed when running forward, so you don't want to impede your forward momentum by taking your middle finger off of W, especially in the middle of a fight. For your weapon slots, I've seen people use their side mouse buttons Z, E, F, X, C, but what I recommend, especially for someone just getting used to mouse and keyboard, is to keep them on 1 through 5 or possibly 2 through 6 if you want to keep your pickaxe on 1. Doing this will allow you to keep things uniform and easy to remember when trying to learn how to build efficiently as well. When reaching for your weapons, you don't want to use your middle finger. You want to use your ring finger and your pointer finger to press 2 and 3. It will take time, but you will get used to it. Now for your edit button. This button should not conflict with any of your build binds at all. Think of it as a build bind, basically keeping the same rule, 1 build to 1 finger. Put the edit button on a finger that you don't use as a build. The reason for this is simply that you want to be able to edit and build as fast as possible. Having multiple of these functions on 1 finger will hinder your speed. Personally, I use F, but you may want to use G, caps lock, a mouse button, C. It's up to how comfortable you can make yourself with the bind that you use. For your pickaxe, map, inventory, crouch, reload, traps, emotes, and really everything else, it doesn't matter that much. I will give you my binds that I recommend, but these really are for you to experiment with and figure out for yourself. I have my pickaxe as X. The reason I have it as X is because it is a key that is easy for me to press and is a key I use a lot. I moved it from 1 because I found it too difficult to reach 6 as a weapon slot, and I wanted to keep all my weapon slots as numbers. My use button is E. E is a standard use button in almost every FPS game, so I felt no reason to change that. I see some people change it, but I don't feel the need. If you feel that it would be better as a build bind, then by all means change it. Reload I have as R, is also standard in most FPS games. T I have as traps, is easy for me to reach, but isn't as important as other buttons that I want closer to WASD. Same with my map and emote. I have those as V and B. Easy to press, but don't need them close to WASD. Crouch is left shift. I don't like having to reach down to left control, so I switch their functions. Caps lock is inventory. I don't have a strong pinky, so I wanted to have the least meaningful buttons. Then touch to talk is tap. You may have noticed that I don't use Z or G, two keys that are pretty popular among streamers. Z, I feel as though I can't reach comfortably without using my middle finger, and I don't want to take that off of W or S. G is actually not that bad of an option for functions that aren't that important, but my personal preference is not to use it because it is a bit uncomfortable to reach for me. Lastly, before we wrap this up, part of improving on mouse and keyboard is practicing. I'm going to give you 3 creative courses that will help you get better faster. So number 1 is the All Skills Edit course by Duke. The code is 3109-2373-6946. The next one is Skavoke, not sure if I'm saying that right, Aim Training Season 2 by Danwozi, by the way. I'm not sure if I'm saying that name right again, but there you go. The code for this one is 8022-6842-4965. The last one is Crank Simulator Infinity Free Build Map by Immature. The code for this one is 0633-5010-2549. So that is an edit course, aim training, and then a crank simulator where pretty much you get a build and you don't have to break everything down. It will do that for you. Hope you all enjoyed the video. If you haven't subscribed, make sure you hit that red button, and I hope you all have a great day.